The VA loan is the single best primary residence mortgage in existence. Hands down. I don't like anyone who's ever dug into it knows that. I mean, there's so many perks to it and things you can do with it that you can't do with other loans. Yeah, if you bought a house 14 years ago, lived in it for 2 years, as long as you're within 3 years of exiting the military. So you had to have bought it on active duty or while serving, and then as long as you're within 3 years of exiting the military, you can wipe it. The 2 out of 5 rule is great. It's just one of those obscure things for vets that's just that much better.
Yeah, whole life is the only way infinite banking should be used because it's not about the investment. It's just a product to help you take back the banking functions in your life.
But I will say this, for all my shit talking about infinite banking and whole life and how bad some of those policies guys are, boy, would it have saved me money in the divorce because you can't go after it.
Yeah, private contract. Think about that. If you're a veteran out there, you can buy a house with 0 down payment. You're financing 100% of the property, so no money's coming out of your pocket right then and there. If you're disabled, there's no funding fee tacked onto it, so you have a lower down payment. There's no PMI, and interest rates are the lowest on VA loans. And here's a little tidbit. All the lenders out there are going to hate my guts for this. It's insane. So just do a lot of negotiating if you're a veteran. You deserve it, which I forgot to tell you, man. Thank you for your service. Appreciate you.
Easy, man. I appreciate it. It was a good time.
This is the Mr. Burr Show.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. Today is an episode that you're going to get a ton of value from, especially if you are a veteran. I actually have a military vet here who, obviously was kicking ass and taking names as that role in his life, but then became a real estate investor and now has become a multimillionaire. He is an author, and that just doesn't happen often with the military. So he's one of the few, the proud, the Marines, but also just a badass real estate investor who's built a huge community helping military vets get out of that rat race that so many people are stuck in. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you guys, if you've not met him already, if you don't know who he is, David Pere. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, brother. Thanks for having me. This is fun, and we're trying to change that stigma of it not being the norm for service members.
100%, man. So kind of tell me then how you got into real estate. How does a Marine get into real estate?
Well, I did it the hard way. But, I would say most people should just use their VA loan and buy like a fourplex. So I joined out. I grew up in Arkansas. I didn't want to go to school, didn't have a scholarship, wanted to travel, see the world. And I was like, what better way to do that than join the Marine Corps? They'll pay me to travel and have adventures. And it was great. And then about 7 years in, I realized, hey, I'm either going to keep doing this or I need to figure something out because I have no money saved and there's no way I could exit this job without just taking another. And a friend of mine handed me, he was trying to get me into Amway actually, but he handed me the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And it's funny. I told him I don't like to read. So he gave it to me on a CD and was like, you drive a lot, just listen to it. All right, fine. You got me. You called my bluff. And then that book changed the trajectory of my life completely, right? We were just talking about Robert, like, dude, that book started the journey for so many people. And it's funny because it doesn't even say anything profound. It's just like, takes a really boring subject and makes it digestible. And so I got done with that. I started learning more about real estate, reading more of the Purple Library, stumbled upon Bigger Pockets, and the idea of house hacking just made sense to me. So I was like, oh, I should do that. And that's kind of, where we take off with all this is like, I bought a duplex. I used the FHA loan because my lender at the time told me you can only use a VA loan once. Don't waste it on that house, which is wrong.
They didn't know.
Yeah, didn't know what he was doing.
They didn't know entitlement.
That's it, man. And, so that got me started. And then the more once I moved out of that house, I was hooked. I was like, oh, this thing's paying me $200 a month. And I don't do anything. This is amazing. I'm going to do more of this. And then it was a bit of a slow roll at first because you don't make any money in the military. And so I had to use high leverage and creative financing and all this crap. And then it snowballed. And at one point we were doing like 4 deals a month and then did what everyone else does. And I kind of backed off that and was like, what if I raise money for bigger deals and don't have to do as much? And yeah, that's kind of where we're at now.
How long ago was that?
Let's see. I sold my wholesaling company probably just over 2 years ago.
I mean, how long ago did you get into real estate? Like that first deal?
First deal was 9 years, 8.5 years.
Wow. Probably seems like yesterday, right?
Dude, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. Look back on
My wife and I were just talking about this the other day. It's like we're going on 8 years together, and we blinked and that happened. It's like she was 23, I was 31, now I'm almost 40. Just nuts, man, how fast time goes. One thing that you mentioned, you said Purple Library. I'm not sure what that is.
Oh, it's all the Robert Kiyosaki, like all the Rich Dad books.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
All in the Purple Library because they're all. If you look at all these books, they all have the purple spines.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense now.
Yeah.
So it's funny because when I got into real estate, I went into YouTube University, and someone asked me, they're like, "What's YouTube University? How do I sign up for that?" I'm like, "It's just YouTube. You just watch YouTube videos." So
whatever you want to learn. Yeah.
So let's get into like that first deal. So the first deal was a duplex, right?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. So duplex using FHA because the lender said you couldn't use VA. Let's touch on that real quick for the veterans out there. I used to be a loan officer, so I would talk to veterans, and yeah, some of them don't know you can use a VA loan several times. You just can't use up all your entitlement. So let's talk about that real quick so people know what that means.
Yeah, I mean, dude, it's amazing the misconceptions about the VA loan. I will straight up, I would argue back and forth till I'm blue in the face that the VA loan is the single best primary residence mortgage in existence.
Hands down.
I don't think like anyone who's ever dug into it knows that because there's so many perks to it and things you can do with it that you can't do with other loans. I mean, it doesn't have a debt to income barrier. It doesn't have a credit barrier. It doesn't have a, there's just, it goes on and on and on and on. Right. But to your point, yeah, in January 1st of 2020, they removed the limit on your first purchase with the VA loan. And so you can now buy, if you can qualify for the loan, you can buy as big a house as you want, zero down. So a buddy of mine, Matt, called me one day and was like, "Hey, I just wanted to thank you." And I'm like, "Oh, cool. For what?" And he's like, "Well, what I do article on this about the entitlement." I'm like, "Oh, cool." He's like, "Yeah, I was under contract to buy a $2.5 million house in Dallas, and I was ready to cut a $500,000 check for 20% down. And now we just closed zero down. So thanks for saving me $500,000. And I was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." Obviously, he's doing very well. That's not the norm for vets to buy a $2.5 million house zero down, but that just proves it can be done. But to your point, you can rinse and repeat. So you can restore your entitlement once if you sold on the property, or you can continue to restore it if you sell the properties, and you can buy multiple houses as long as you're under that entitlement limit. Because after the first use, the county loan limits pick up. So far, my buddy Naaman holds the record from what I've seen. He had 4 duplexes at the same time on mortgages. They were all around like 180 to 220 price. And he had 4 in 4 different locations because he'd just been kind of, he was here, then he was here, then he was here, then he was here as he PCS'd in the military, all zero down, all living for free, all cash flowing. And to my knowledge, he still owns all 4 of them, which is sick.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's great.
Heck yeah. So one thing that people don't realize about VA loans is, yeah, it's zero down. And there is, if you have disability, it's even better. So let's talk about, if you're a disabled vet, how a VA loan gets better for the veteran.
Yeah. Well, if you do any loan under 20% down, you have to pay mortgage insurance premium and private mortgage insurance. And, for reference for anyone listening, that comes out to, it varies, but roughly $100 a month for every $100,000 you borrow. So on $1 million home, you're probably looking at about $1,000 in PMI. My first duplex, I think I paid $81 a month, and the duplex was $79.9. And on the VA loan, you pay a 2.15% funding fee, but it's rolled into the loan, amortized over 30 years. And so I did the math. On like a 7% interest rate right now, it would cost you $14.30 for every $100K you borrowed. So if you go out to like $1 million loan, you're talking, $144 or $143 vice $1,000. So that's better anyway. The funding fee is not that big a deal. but
Right.
it's waived for anybody who has at least 10% disability as a veteran, or if you're still serving and you have a Purple Heart. And so it's which is interesting because
Is that new? Is that new?
the Purple Heart piece is fairly new. I think like the last 2 years. And what's
Okay.
interesting about it, the way it's written, the Purple Heart only counts if you're still serving. So if you get out of the military with a Purple Heart and somehow have zero disability, you'd again be forced to pay the funding fee. But I don't know anyone who's been shot.
Would it be retro?
So, no,
So like they would tack it on later?
no. Yeah, no. It's waived.
Oh, if you got another house, then you'd have the funding fee.
Yeah.
Got it.
But
Got it.
it's I don't know anybody who has a Purple Heart and doesn't have at least 10% disability. So, most of my buddies with a Purple Heart are 100%. So,
Got it. So it's been 5 years since I've been in that field. So it's a little
some changes like the first time use has no limit. That didn't used to be the case. So,
yeah, that's new.
yeah, it's sick. They've made it better.
Well, guys, so think about that. If you're a veteran out there, you can buy a house with zero down payment. So you're financing 100% of the property. So no money's coming out of your pocket right then and there. If you're disabled, there's no funding fee tacked onto it. So you have a lower down payment. There's no PMI. So again, lower down payment, and interest rates are the lowest on VA loans. And here's a little tidbit I will tell you right now. All the lenders out there are going to hate my guts for this. VA loans pay a ton to the lender. So you can get a huge discount off of closing costs to where you're getting basically a free loan, and you can even get like seller credits and things like that. So, guys,
It's to 4% of the purchase price. Yeah.
it's insane. So just do a lot of negotiating if you're a veteran. You deserve it, which I forgot to tell you, man. Thank you for your service. Appreciate you.
Easy, man. I appreciate it. It was a good time.
100%. So,
Most of the time.
so think about that, guys. You've got a VA loan. If you do like David did, you can get up to 4 units. So you can get a duplex, triplex, or a fourplex. And then, correct me if I'm wrong, this is what you did. You lived in one of the units, you rented out the other.
Yep.
House hacking. So
I've done that 3 times now.
it's incredible, guys. So how did that work for you? So you were living in the unit, renting out the other one, and you said that it covered your mortgage and gave you cash flow of about $200.
Well, so when I first bought it, I was out of pocket $115 a month. So I was, at the time I bought it, I was paying $550 a month to live in a 2-bed, 1-bath apartment, single guy, whatever. And then I bought it. I moved in. There was a tenant on the other side for $475. They were actually Section 8, so they were locked into a lower rate. And I ended up having to, I think I had to come out. My mortgage was $585, so I had to come out of pocket like $110 a month, vice the $550 I had been paying. And then, but that was to own a 2-bed, 1-bath duplex plus the land plus whatever. And then when I moved out, it started, which was like 6 months later because I got orders to Hawaii. As soon as I moved out, it paid me on average $250 a month for the next, I think I owned it 7 years, 6 years, 6 or 7 years. And then I sold it. So I bought it for $79,900, all in if you count the down payment, the floor I had to restore, and whatever. I think I might have put $4,500 into that house, and including, down payment. And then I sold it for $165, $169, something like that. So I doubled up essentially. Just killer.
In how many years?
7.
Incredible. So then,
$4,000 down into, 80,000 in profit plus cash flow. So probably 85.
and how long did you live in it before you got orders to Hawaii?
6 months.
So you lived in it for 6 months, rented it out for 6.5 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So guys, another little hack that you might not know about. If you sell a property that you live in 2 out of the previous 5 years, you can negate any kind of capital gains. So everything that he gained, if he lived in that house for 2 out of the last 5 years, which he didn't, but if he did, he could negate up to $250,000 of capital gains as a single person. If you're married, it's up to $500,000. You don't have to pay capital gains. It's one of the best hacks there is that some people just don't know about. So
For this,
let's go. I'm ready to hear it.
That's the Section 121 exclusion, right? It's
Right.
even better if you're a service member. It's
I didn't know.
years out of the last 15.
So you were able to get the.
Well, I didn't live in it the 2 years, so that was my
That's right.
stickler. But yeah, if you bought a house 14 years ago, lived in it for 2 years, as long as you're within 3 years of exiting the military. So you had to have bought it on active duty or while serving, and then as long as you're within 3 years of exiting the military, you can wipe it. And so I had a buddy, for perspective, he bought a house for, well, I don't know the prices, but he bought a house in 2014 in North Park, San Diego. He sold it a year and a half ago, way more than the 5-year mark. I mean, he's talking 8 years at that point. And he netted $517, and he's married. He had to pay taxes on $17,000.
Incredible, dude.
Yeah, so they
I had no idea about that.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Is that only for VA loans or just veterans in general?
Veterans in general, for any property that you bought while serving and sold within 3 years of the time you left the military.
Wow.
Well,
Dude,
I should say any one property. You can only do it on one, unfortunately. But yeah, it's sick.
wow. I just got another wrinkle in my brain. You learn something new every day.
That's a very obscure exemption that most people don't realize is extended. But you think of, like, if you could own a house for 15 years and turn around and sell it, no capital gains, like, you're probably going to hit the ceiling for capital gains tax depending on where you lived in 15 years. Like, imagine if you bought a house in Phoenix 13 years ago. Like,
Dude,
you're probably doing okay. Yeah.
Dude, put it in perspective. Like, this is my home office here. So this house, we freaking got so lucky, man. We started the build of it. We signed the papers literally right before everything went crazy in 2020. Like, it was like November 2020. So we signed the papers in like September, and the base price for this house was like $530. After we did all of our upgrades, I think we were at like $815. But by the time they started building, which was 6 months later, the same house base price was $850.
Dude.
It's just crazy, bro.
Yeah, man.
Just crazy.
Yeah, so if you could have, the 2 out of 5 rule's great. It's just one of those obscure things for vets that's just that much better.
So cool. Is there anything else like that for veterans that
No,
it's kind of
not anything too crazy. I mean, I'm sure there's some stuff here and there. There's all kinds of different benefits and hacks. But as far as real estate goes, the only other one that I'd say usually blows people's mind, which you're probably more than familiar with, is the ERL, the interest rate reduction refinance loan. That loan's, for anyone listening, the really short is it lets you reduce your interest rate without having to pull credit, have an income verification, or live in the house anymore. So it's pretty cool. But that's
incredible. So with those, again, it's been 5 years since I've done this, so I'm kind of foggy. But with those, can you dictate the term? So, like, let's say everyone knows there's a 30, there's a 15, I believe there's a 20-year and a 25-year VA loan. So if you do a 30 and you're 10 years into it, some people are like, I'll reset the clock. That's probably one of the worst things you could do, because you're resetting all the interest that you paid, because the interest is amortized towards the beginning.
You get fights about that.
Oh, because she's just looking at the rate and the payment, right?
She was so mad that I'm trying to say this without shit talking too much. I pay $900 a month more currently on this house because I refinanced to take her name off of it and put it in an investor loan just to free up her credit to refinance her primary, because she was so set. And get this, she's on a 385 or 3875 right now. And during the 21 madness, she was so set on trying to get a 2.5 or a 3% interest rate that she wanted to refi. And she was 11 years into the amortization. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, I broke every chart out. I'm like, you're finally paying more principal than interest. Like, leave it. Do not touch it. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. This is stupid.
You know what's funny, dude, is if someone else told her the exact same thing, she'd probably listen. But just because it was from you, she didn't listen. Because people don't understand it. it's not the rate of interest that matters, it's the volume of interest. If you keep resetting the clock, it doesn't matter if you get down to a 0.5%. It's amortized over 30 years.
So it makes amortize it because most people don't stay. They move.
Yeah, they know that they move, they refinance. So as far as like that goes, let's say with the Earl, you're 10 years in, can you do it to where you're keeping it at a 20-year, or does it have to reset back to a 30?
Honestly, I don't know the answer to that. I'll ask and I'll text you and we'll get you an answer.
If anyone in the comments knows, put that, and because I just want to know.
Yeah, the cool thing with the Earl is it has rules that force it to save you money. So like you can't use, for anyone, so I guess the longer answer here, you have to have owned the house for 210 days and or made 6 mortgage payments before you're eligible. So if you're a vet, the moment you hit 6 months, you're going to start getting just a flood of Earl offers, and you should just throw them all out because most of them are BS.
Right.
But the way it works, in order for you to be able to use it, there's a 0.5% funding fee tacked on, but it has to drop your interest rate by at least 0.5%, and the monthly payment has to be low enough to recoup all the costs of the Earl. So all the closing cost fees, funding fee, everything has to be able to be recouped within 36 months. So if it doesn't drop your interest rate 0.5% and repay itself within 36 months, you're not eligible to do it. So it's cool because you can only do it if it actually saves you money. I just don't know the amortization question because that is a good question because I see people reset it and I'm like, man, like that's fine if you bought it 2 years ago, 3 years ago and you're resetting, or if you bought it. Like I love the Earl because right now you can buy a house and if rates skyrocket, you're locked. And if rates plummet, you just do the Earl in 6 months, you get the lower rate. And so it's like a win-win way to hedge. But you're right. That's a great question. I'll find out.
I like that they put those guidelines in place because it makes it to where people can't, or loan officers can't just purposefully screw you over by only dropping a little bit, knowing they're going to call you back in 3 months to drop it a little bit more and call you back in 3 months and drop it a little bit more. So I think that's smart. I got into the mortgage industry in 2005. Dude, 20 years old, didn't know my ass from my elbow, and I was making 10 grand a month as a 20-year-old kid going to school. And I'm like, why am I going to school? So I dropped out, but dude, it was grimy back then. I remember when I started, do you remember AmeriQuest Mortgage? Dude, I started on
prime loans and all the goodness.
Bro, I'll never forget my branch manager's name, Alex Gleitman. Alex, if you're listening to this, shout out, bro. But so I'm 20 years old. He's probably late 20s. He hands me a calculator, like a Mortgage 101 book. This is my first day. And then hands me a thing of whiteout. And I'm thinking I'm like, dude, cool. So I'll read this book. It makes sense. I got to know about mortgages. I didn't even know how to spell mortgage at the time. Calculator, makes sense. What's the whiteout for? He's like, you'll find out.
Dude, you can't use whiteout on anything now.
So grimy, bro. So grimy. He used to say, and I don't want to throw him under the bus. This is just everybody.
Yeah.
But I'd have like a complete document file, except for like one document that we needed to send it to processing. And I'm like, I don't have this. I'm going to call them back. He's like, no. Check this out. Cut out a signature, tape it onto it, put it through the copy machine. He's like, send it. I'm like, really? He's like, dude, do you want to get paid? I'm like, I guess. Like, grimy back then, bro.
It's funny. So you and I wouldn't say we have a disagreement, but we view IULs and infinite banking and whole life differently. And my reason for that isn't that I hate IULs, infinite banking, whole life. It's that industry is so unregulated. It's like mortgage was in 05, 06. And I see people getting screwed by the guys who are like, I kind of got my license and taught a thing or two. I'm going to sell you all this stuff, but I'm going to write your policy this way because I don't actually know what I'm doing. And, so there's like a handful of guys I trust that I'm like, all right, these dudes will do you right. And in the right situation, it's a brilliant strategy. But I can't vouch for the industry as a whole because what I see, because I have a Facebook group with like 68,000 people. So what I see from those guys is like them spewing, and I'm like, all of that's wrong. I'm like, everything you're saying right now is a pitch, and it's not how you're going to write the policy. They're like, oh, BS. And I'm like, no, it's not. Like, you're never going to go and write, like, anyway. So it's funny because it's like, I don't actually hate the product. I just hate that it's so unregulated that like the 19-year-old kid who has a pulse can write a bajillion-dollar life insurance policy and thinks he knows what he's doing.
Dude, I agree 100% because infinite banking is not a product, it's a concept.
Yeah.
It's a way of how to use life insurance to take back the banking functions in your life. That's what it is. But IULs came about and everyone thinks it's a way to do infinite banking because it illustrates really well. You'll get this much interest, but no downside floor. I think IULs are the worst thing ever. They're the most, unregulated thing. People don't know what the hell they're talking about. They don't know how they really work, yet they're pitching them like they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's just a product. Whole life is the only way infinite banking should be used because it's not about the investment. It's just a product to help you take back the banking functions in your life. Whole life has no risk. So there shouldn't be any risk.
Preservation strategy. And if you've got, like, I think the ideal, it works for more than this, but in my head, like the ideal person for it is like, if you can stroke a 6-figure check, fund it, like overfund on day one, and then have access to the capital, like it's gold. Where I struggle with it is when I see like, if people say like, oh, roll your 401k. And I'm like doing the math and I'm like, this kid's got $5,000. He's not even gonna be able to access that capital for 7 years. Like that's not the right person. That's not the right way to use it. Like I love for like kids. But I will say this, for all my shit talking about infinite banking and whole life and how bad some of those policies guys are, boy, would it have saved me money in the divorce because you can't go after that.
Private contract.
Yeah, man.
Right?
I kick myself. I'm like, why were you so focused on smack talking? If you'd stuffed some profit in there, you would have had more money in your pocket. But
yeah, man, that's all I do is I teach people the correct way to do it, the way R. Nelson Nash, the creator of the concept, taught. Infinite banking is not a product. It is a concept. Whole life insurance that's overfunded where you can access the money immediately, that's just the best product, right? So if you put in $5,000, you can access up to like $400 to $4,500 of that right away. And then the 5,000 just keeps compounding. But it's these IUL guys that are like, oh yeah, you can do that. But then there's a surrender charge and you can't touch anything for, like you said, 7 years. It's horrible. So
half of them don't even know the difference between like direct and non-direct recognition policies. And so they're like, oh yeah, you're going to earn interest on this while your money's out. Also, I'm going to sell you the policy where that's a lie, but don't worry about that. You won't find out till it's too late. I'm like, oh.
So most of my listeners know because I talk about this so often, but if anyone doesn't, let's tell them what the difference is between a direct recognition and a non-direct recognition company.
Yeah, I mean, it's simple, right? Everyone pitches infinite banking as you can put the money in this account, you can lend it to yourself or to a property or invest it however you see fit. And then while the 100K or whatever it is out working on that project, you're still earning the return, like the interest on the money as if it was sitting in the account. Well, that's only true in a non-direct recognition policy. In a direct recognition policy, the money has to be in the account in order to earn interest on it. On a non-direct recognition policy, you'll earn interest on it whether the money's lent out or not. The problem is that a lot of these companies, they have the pitch deck on whole life, but the way it's more profitable for the company if they do a direct recognition. And so they'll sell it one way, they'll write it another way. Same with, the commissions based on the death benefit. And so they're building, they're trying to build these cash value. They're like selling massive, heavy cash value policies. But then when it comes time to write it, a lot of these guys are like, well, we'll write it with a heavy death benefit and a small cash value. And this guy it won't matter. And we'll get the bigger commission check. And so you just got to go with someone who actually knows what they're doing. And so I would stay away from the small kid who's in a multi-level marketing company and got the, certificate like last week. And I would go with someone who actually knows what they're doing, which clearly you and I view similarly. So
100%, man. So guys, make sure to hit me up. I've written over 3,000 policies, written the correct way. All right, on to the next thing. So let's get into a little bit of how you scaled. All right, so you went from a VA loan duplex, and then 6 months later, you're back in the military. Were you scaling while you were in the military, or was it when you came back?
Yeah, no. So I was in the military the whole time. I was in Missouri as a recruiter, and then I got stationed in Hawaii. I did not buy anything in Hawaii while I was there because at the time there was still a limit on the VA, and I was priced out of where I lived in Hawaii. I could have bought on the other side of the island, but I had a pregnant wife at the time, and she was like, there's no way you were going to commute 45 minutes each direction. So no. So we lived on base, which, don't get me wrong, in Hawaii, like, base housing was $1 million view that I would never have been able to afford, and a really nice house that actually had air conditioning. So I'm okay with it. While in Hawaii, I mean, it took me a year and a half to save up for my next property because I was, military. You're not making a ton of money. $200 in cash flow doesn't go so far. And my second property, I was actually handwriting letters to try to buy duplexes. And this guy called me back and was like, I have a duplex, but I don't want to sell it. But I have a 10 unit I'd be willing to get rid of. And that was way out of my comfort zone, but the numbers worked. I got it for a great price. I negotiated down on, repairs that needed to be done. And he was willing to carry 10%. And so I bought this place. It's actually my favorite deal I've ever done. I don't want to say I'll never get returns like this again. I'm going to knock on wood and hope I do. But like, if I go back in time and do 100 of these deals, I would bankrupt the bank trying to get the money to so I paid $212,500. This was a crap, class D property, falling apart neighborhood. But I paid $212,500. It was bringing in $4,200 a month in gross. I got it up to $4,800. But because of the way we structured it, the bank covered 85%, the seller covered 10%, and I had to come out of pocket 4.9%. I brought $10,990 and some change to the closing table. 4 years to the day later, I sold it for $340,000. And so I'm $11,000 into this place. It cash flowed probably $500 a month on average the entire time I owned it. And 4 years later, I sold it for $120,000 over the original price plus pay down. So, I mean, I think all in, I ran the math once. I think I put $11,000 in and I cashed $193,000 out over the time I owned that.
So it's nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And then I think
oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just say from there, we just bought more duplexes and singles and just kind of whatever. And then I kind of started wholesaling. And my whole thing there was I'd wholesale one or two and I'd flip one, or I'd wholesale one or two and I'd burr one, or I'd wholesale one or two and I'd, just hold one. And then, at one point I found the guy called me back about a single family, and I ended up buying a hotel, 2 apartments and a single family from him. And after a while, I just got tired of chasing the tail. Wholesaling's like a relentless, you got to feed the beast every day. And I was like, I got other shit I want to do. So I sold it to a friend and I get 20% of whatever they make, and I don't do it anymore. And then I kind of started raising capital for other deals, and that's been my shtick recently.
How are you raising capital?
Over the years, I started a blog, and so people know me online as the guy who helps service members and vets, achieve financial freedom. So the brand, there's an email list there, and I have an investor list, and then people just know me. So whenever we push deals out, it kind of was an accident, man. Like when I started wholesaling, I was marketing for 4 months, didn't get a single deal. And then the week before Christmas, it would have been like the 22nd or 23rd of December. Over 48 hours, we locked 7 contracts. And I was like, I don't have money for this. What do I do now? And so I sent all 7 deals out, and I was like, I've got these 7 things. I will take this price. If you want to buy the house, email me. If you want to lend on it for the renovation, here's what the total would be, and here's the terms I'd get. And it came back perfectly. We wholesaled 4, we flipped 3, and of the 3, 1 we kept, we burred, and within a week, every single property was spoken for, and I was like, oh, this email list has some buying power. And then it was just game over. So since then I've probably raised, I don't know, $4.5 million either for syndications or for private lending, or for, one that I did recently was 2 months ago, we bought 13 single families in a vacant lot, and I raised the down payment, the renovation fund, and brought my lender in. And then the guy who found the deal is operating it, managing the renovations. I'm hands off. He owns 65%. I own 35%. And all I did was stake the debt. So
Beautiful.
cool.
Beautiful. So, dude, I love that you have an email list because so many people out there, they're not taking advantage of that. And let's talk about the importance of that because I'm a firm believer. I've got a big following. I've got about 1.1 million across all platforms. Dude, that could go away tomorrow.
Yeah.
But my email list, that's evergreen.
Yeah.
That's mine. I own it. Right? I don't own Instagram. I don't own TikTok. I don't own YouTube. So how did you build that? Just from the Facebook groups and stuff like that and the blog? How did you do it?
Yeah, luckily for me, when I first started everything, I went to this event called FinCon back in 2018, which is a financial convention for like bloggers and finance nerds. And I probably heard 4 or 5 people who presented at that event say that their biggest regret ever when they started a community or a blog or whatever was not starting an email list sooner. And they were like, I don't care what or why or how you do it, but start an email list. And the reason was exactly what you said. I mean, we saw with like Andrew Tate, you see it all the time. Like people just disappear, but they always have the email list. It's the only thing you can own. And so I started it. And the thing that has been the 2 best lead magnets for me, one is giving away like a free PDF copy of my book. And the other is when people join my Facebook group, I just ask. It's not even like a, hey, put your email here. It's just like, hey, if you want information, like drop your email. And then we probably, about a third of the people who join my group drop on the email list. And so of the almost 70,000 people in that Facebook group, I'd say probably 25,000 of them are on my email list now. And then we're right at around 40,000 on the email list, which isn't huge, but it's enough to do some damage for sure. And then you can, I'm playing with the idea of running some campaigns to get friends to refer just to the email list, but we'll see. But yeah, it's that thing's money, man. I tell everyone, I'm like, anything you do online, find a way or a reason to connect emails, because at some point in life, that's where your money's going to come from for deals.
100%. So you've got the online community through Facebook, 70,000. That, if I'm not mistaken, that is the largest for military. Right?
There is one competitor. I say competitor. I don't know what you'd call them. They are a little bit larger, but I would say that our overall community is probably 3 times what theirs is. They've just got me beat on Facebook. I won't talk smack about them publicly, but I probably will soon enough, but I'm not a huge fan. Their whole community is based on sales and upsell, and it's the very Grant Cardone, like, we're going to always pitch you something. And it's a turnoff for me. And lucky enough for me, it's a turnoff for enough people that I get tons of people who come my way. And when I ask why they joined the community, they're like, well, I was in this community and I didn't like this. And then people told me, you don't do that. So here I am. And I'm like, cool. Yeah, come on in, take all my free shit. And pay me eventually.
Dude, I love that. I actually checked out your stuff. And from what I understand, that's the whole part of your Facebook group is like, we're not here to sell you anything. It's just give value, give value, give value, give value. If you do that, eventually people are just going to pay you for things that you offer. Yep. People have it the other way around. They're just like sale, 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 sale. And you can smell that. Like anyone can they can feel it. They can smell it. And I built my brand and my, my following from doing infinite banking as a real estate investor, not trying to sell it, but just telling people what I was doing. Here's how I use this to go buy this property. I burr out of it. Now I get all the money back. I put it back in the policy. The overage, I take and get another policy. So I don't overfund this one too much and have it become a MEC, modified endowment contract. That makes it taxable. You don't want that. I was just teaching people what I was doing, giving free value. All of a sudden grew a following. And now everyone was like, dude, how can I get one? And then it just hit me. I'm like, well, I should probably be licensed so I can be the one that sets it up. You know?
Yeah.
So I love it, man. I love that you have that.
My real estate license.
Hell yeah.
Just people were always like, do you know a good agent? Do you know a good lender? And I was like, yeah. And I was making all these intros. And then David Green, actually, with Bigger Pockets, texted me and it was like, hey, dumbass, you know, if you got licensed, I could pay you for this. This is like the third closing from someone you've introduced me to. And I was like, oh, well, that'd be cool. What does that look like? And then he walked me through it. And I was like, he's like, I could give you a 25% check. And I'm like, okay, cool. What is that? Like $200? He's like, on this house, it'd be almost $4,000. I'm like, I'm going to get my license. And, that's been a 6-figure little side thing for me up until this year. This year, we're definitely not doing 6 figures because the market's just slow right now. But the last 4 years, it was between 110 and 130K net commissions, and my assistant runs it. I might do a half hour a month on it, so it's pretty sick.
And is that all going to David Green and his team?
No. Yeah, we have a nationwide network now of basically I took the Facebook group and I would just go there and be like, who's the best agent in this city whenever I needed someone, and then I'd have people recommend. And then I don't do like some communities, kind of like the one I mentioned with the Facebook group. They will charge agents. They're like, hey, for $4,000, you can be our guy. And I don't do that. I'm like, you can be my guy if you're the best. And if someone else wants to be my guy in your area, I'm going to pitch him against you. And if he beats you, he's taking the spot. Like whoever closes, like whatever's best for the client is who I'm going to use. And it's been fun.
I love it. Do you still do any business with David?
Yeah. Anytime we got a Sacramento lead or a San Francisco lead, it goes towards his team.
Perfect. The reason I asked that is because what he did was like almost like a barometer for me if I'm going to keep doing business with somebody, because he could have just kept getting it and kept all the commission to himself. But he's like, dude, I've got enough. Like once you make a certain amount of money, it's just more money. It's just like you can only buy such a nice car. Once you have a Lamborghini and you drive it for a while, it's just a car, right? So he looked at it as like abundance. Let me help this guy make more money. And because of that, he's going to keep doing business with me. It's the law of reciprocity.
Yeah, David's so I love him, and I will thank him for that forever.
Oh yeah, we'll make the connection. Get me on Bigger Pockets, my brother.
I'll pull the strings that I have. I will tell you, Bigger Pockets is the hardest real estate podcast there is to get on. But I'm also, I think I'm batting close to 100 right now. But I will say, just for anyone who's listening and is going to hit me up about that, it's a very, very few and far between that I'll make that intro.
I'm sure, man. It'd be fun to get on there because I know with Brandon Turner does the Burr method, and like it's funny because, dude, I became Mr. Burr in March of 2020. I was doing flips and wholesaling, and my mentor at the time, Templeton Walker, shout out Temp, love you, dog. We were doing a walkthrough on a property we were going to buy, and he's like, dude, you've been crushing it, kind of just like riding my wave, so to speak, as a mentee. But there's something about you that can set you apart. Like I'm holding you back in a way, and figure out what that is and run with it. So I went home that night, started thinking like, what is special about me? And I knew this method of the Burr method, and I wanted to like start building wealth and holding on to properties. I'm like, dude, my last name is Burr. How about I become Mr. Burr?
Yep.
And we made a music video, and someone actually tagged Brandon Turner in it. And he put it on his channel, and it gained me like 4,000 followers at the time. Like I had like 1,500 followers on Instagram. So like the next day I was at like 5,500. I was like, yeah. So it'd be a cool story to get on there and tell that.
I think that'd be good. Yeah, I'm happy to make an intro. Brandon's he's the entire reason my brand exists. I was trying to figure out how to write a book related to the military. I'd been lucky enough to meet him at a networking event in Hawaii. And then I was trying to help him like buy a house when he was trying to move out there. So, I was like looking for stuff when he was out of town. So we got close enough. He was a big surfer. And I was like, yo, one of the best surfing beaches on the island is on the Marine Corps base. You can only get on if you're with a Marine. Let me have you over for dinner. We'll go surf. We'll hang out, whatever. And while he was at my house, I just asked him, I was like, dude, I want to write a book someday. What do you recommend? I know you talk about 1,000 words a day, but how do I learn to write? And he was like, start a blog. I'm like, oh, that's a cool idea. What should I write about? And he was like, I don't know, dude, there's a bunch of service members buying real estate. Just document what you're doing. And that one conversation, like I've told him this probably 15 times now. But that one conversation is where the entire brand stemmed from. I was like, oh, that's a cool idea. And I ran with it. And now it's like my entire livelihood. So it's pretty cool.
Super cool, man. Isn't it crazy how like there's these inflection points in life where you get to that point and you either like he gave you that little knowledge, you could have just not used it and you'd be in a totally different point in your life. Or you could have just not caught it, like what he was telling you, and it kind of just manifested into something different.
Yep.
I'm always so fascinated by those inflection points in life when you get to like the fork in the road. And it's the successful people in life, agree with me or not, that when they get to those, they just freaking take action and go through and do the thing that they're like, dude, Brandon's super successful. If he tells you to do something, why the hell wouldn't you do it?
That dude's an idea factory for sure.
I just heard him speak on stage this weekend at WealthCon, Ryan Pineda's event.
Yeah.
Super cool. So I have a call with Ryan in 7 minutes, guys. So we're going to have to wrap this up. But I hate to wrap it up because, dude, it's already been freaking 45 minutes, like the fastest 45 minutes ever. That's what happens when you're just rapping with somebody, right? Yeah, I'll tell Ryan what's up. Were you on his pod or was he on yours?
He's been on mine, and it's really funny. I'll give you the super short for how we got to know each other. He probably 2 years ago posted, he was hosting a charity event. I think it was for like his minor league baseball coach or something. And he was like, yo, if you can come, it's this much. You get to golf with me all day. But if you can't come and you still want to support the charity, like $500 and I'll do a 15-minute call with you. And so I was like, dude, I was just looking to start scaling social media. And I was like, there's no better person to ask. 15 minutes will be all I need. And so I wrote out all my questions and I paid. And then it wasn't his fault. It was his team. But I couldn't get through his damn team. Like every time I'd email on Instagram, I'd be like, hey, how do I schedule? They'd be like, email this person. And for like 3 months, it was like, I'd email, nothing. I'd email, nothing. I'd email, nothing. I'd DM, nothing. And so finally I was like, you know what? I know how to get a hold of this guy. And I posted. It was like a slide post. And I posted his original message, my receipt, and then screenshots of my communications on Instagram and every email I'd sent. And I tagged him and I was just like, Ryan, what the hell do I need to do to get a hold of you? This is BS. Immediately, I had a voice message in my Instagram, which I let sit for like a day because I was like, no, we're going to let this ride before I respond. And
let it marinate.
Yeah. And so he messaged me. He's like, yo, I'll give you a 30-minute call tomorrow. I'll come on your podcast. How do we make this right? So he gave me a 30-minute call, came on my podcast, gave me free access to his content creator and a ticket to his event out in Vegas, and totally made up for it. Great dude. Ever since then, like we DM back and forth every now and then, we chat, and I love him. But I was like, you can tell a lot about a guy by how they react to that. He could have gotten super pissed, but he immediately was like, that's my team. That's my bad. You're right. I owe you. Let's make it right. And I respect that dude so much for how he handled it.
Dude, he's got a heart of gold. And I was on his podcast last October, and we've kept in touch. He was on my podcast like last month, and I went out to WealthCon, and WealthCon's like, it's great for like a newbie, you know?
Most of these
it gives,
seem like that.
Yeah. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, I'm not getting a ton of value from this, but like I'm getting around other people and just, you know, trying to pour into his people to help him out.
Yeah.
But dude, when he spoke, something clicked, man, because he's got this huge brand, and a part of his presentation was a slide showing he's got 2 million followers. And that's like when he scaled, like he was just doing some flips here and there, making like $700,000-800,000 a year, got on social media, scaled because he had all this attention.
Yep.
And I'm like, I'm sitting there thinking, dude, I've got all the pieces. I've got about as many followers. I've got people that could speak on stage for me that I've built relationships with. I've got everything in place. I just need to start building the teams. So that's what the call is here in like a few minutes, is just to talk to him about how that would look and how he can help me scale. So it's exciting, man. It's going to be fun.
It will be. And I don't want to make you late. So whatever you got to do to wrap up on time.
Cool. So let's do this. Let's leave people with like kind of a nugget. If you just had one thing you could tell everybody, like let's say your 18-year-old self, you go back and you say, dude, knucklehead, do this. What would it be?
Filter the advice you receive through the lens of, has this person achieved what I want to achieve in the aspect of life that they're giving me advice? So if you want to stay married and you're going through struggles, don't take advice from divorcees. Take advice from happily married old people. If you want to, The example I give for that is always if you wanted to get into UFC fighting, you would hire a fighting coach like a Ray Longo or a Matt Serra or whatever. You wouldn't hire your mom because while she might have your best interest at heart, unless she's Ronda Rousey, she probably doesn't know anything about fighting. And yet for some reason, when we get into real estate or business or whatever, your mom or whoever hasn't invested that's close to you in life and still has your best interest at heart starts being like, that's scary. That's a bad idea. And you let them talk you out of it instead of being like, I know you love me, but this isn't your realm of expertise. Let me go follow Mr. Burr. He knows what he's doing and he's going to teach me the right way. And that's, dude, if I'd listened to that at an earlier age and just been able to tune out the noise and just be like, this guy has it dialed in on real estate, I'm going to follow him. And he may have a drinking problem. Great. You know what? I won't listen to him about that, but I'm listening to him about this. Boy, would I be farther along in life.
That is huge. Guys, rewind that, listen to that again and again and again and again, because there's so much wisdom in that. Only take advice with someone that you would gladly trade places with. If someone is just dialed, they've got their abs have abs, and you want to get in shape, take advice from them because you would gladly have their body, right? If someone has an amazing marriage and your marriage sucks, you'd gladly trade places with them. I'm sure you'd rather want a good marriage than a bad one. Take advice from them. On the other side of the coin is like, if you're trying to get wealthy, don't take advice from someone who isn't wealthy.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. But I think we do that so often, to your point, even because the people that give us advice are the people that care about us the most, but they're not experts in the field they're trying to give advice on. So, dude, I love that nugget of wisdom. Where can people follow you to learn more from you and just maybe get your book, like you said?
Oh, yeah. Let me hold it up for anyone watching the video. Ta-da!
The no BS guide to what?
Military life. It's everything I wish I'd known when I joined. So it talks through real estate and investing, but it also talks through like military shit, promotions, whatever. If you go to thebestpodcastguest.com, you can download a free PDF copy and find all my social media.
Love it. So everyone, check that out. If you have not subscribed to my channel, if you're watching this on YouTube and if you've gotten all the way through, you got some damn value from this. So subscribe, hit the bell, hit the like, throw a comment. The algorithm loves all that stuff. And go follow David. It was a pleasure having you on, brother. I appreciate you. Anytime you're out in Phoenix, hit me up. Let's link up, brother.
Absolutely, Devin. I might be out there next month for Steve Trang's show, so I'll let you know.
Dude, perfect. Steve Trang's the homie. Yeah, let me know. All right, until next time, guys. Love y'all. Peace.